The conference room at the Marriott had finally emptied, leaving behind the usual debris of a corporate strategy retreat: coffee-stained napkins, forgotten pens, and the lingering smell of overpriced catering. I loosened my tie and checked my phone. 9:15 p.m. Sarah would be getting Ethan ready for bed soon, probably letting him stay up a few extra minutes to say goodnight to Daddy over FaceTime. 14 years of marriage had taught me the rhythm of our household. Sarah would have picked up groceries after work, helped Ethan with his homework, and by now they'd be settling into their evening routine. I'd promised to bring him back a small souvenir from Chicago, maybe one of those miniature Willis Tower keychains from the hotel gift shop. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Hope the meetings went well. Ethan's asking about you. Love you." I smiled, typing back quickly. "Tell him I'll call in 20 minutes. Can't wait to see you both tomorrow." The elevator ride to my room felt longer than usual. I was looking forward to getting home, to the simple pleasure of tucking Ethan into bed and hearing about his day. At 8 years old, he still believed his father could fix anything, solve any problem. That faith was both humbling and motivating. It made me want to be worthy of it. I had just kicked off my shoes when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jim Morrison, our neighbor across the street, a retired veteran who kept an eye on the neighborhood with the vigilance of a man who'd seen too much chaos in his younger years. "Hello, Jim. Everything okay?" I answered. Jim's voice was shaky, uncertain. "Hey, I'm not sure how to say this, but I think something's wrong at your house." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your boy's been screaming for hours," Jim explained. "I can hear him through the windows. No lights came on, no one's come in or out. I think he's locked in there alone." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat down hard on the hotel bed, my mind struggling to process what I'd just heard. "That's impossible. Sarah's home. She just texted me an hour ago." "I'm looking at your house right now," Jim replied. "Her car's not in the driveway, hasn't been since this morning, but I can hear Ethan crying and it's been going on for a long time." My hands were shaking as I tried to call Sarah, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. The third time, I didn't even wait for the beep. "Jim, I'm 3 hours out. Can you—" I started. "I already tried knocking," Jim interrupted. "The door's locked and I can't see inside. I didn't want to break in without talking to you first." I was already grabbing my keys, my mind racing. "Break it down. I don't care about the door. Just get to my son." "Already on it," Jim said. "I'll call you back." The drive home was a blur of highway lights and mounting panic. I tried Sarah's number dozens of times, each unanswered ring amplifying my fear and confusion. Where was she? How could she leave Ethan alone? This wasn't like her, or at least it wasn't like the woman I thought I'd married. I called her best friend, Kelly, hoping for some explanation. "Oh, hi," Kelly answered. She's not available right now." "Kelly, where is she?" I demanded. "Ethan's alone at the house." Silence. Then, in a voice that cracked with guilt, She's with someone. A friend. They went to dinner and—" "She left our 8-year-old son alone to go on a date?" I cut her off. "It wasn't supposed to be all night," Kelly said defensively. "She said she'd be back by 7, but then they went to his place and—" I hung up. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It was the abandonment of our innocent child. In that moment, I understood that the woman I'd shared my life with for 14 years was capable of something I never could have imagined. I pulled into our driveway at 12:30 a.m. to find Jim waiting on the porch, his weathered face grim. The front door hung open, the frame splintered where he'd kicked it in. "He's okay," Jim said quickly. "Scared, hungry, but okay." I gave him some water and a sandwich. I found Ethan curled up on the kitchen floor, still in his school clothes, his face streaked with dried tears. An empty wine glass sat on the counter, evidence of Sarah's priorities. When he saw me, he scrambled to his feet and ran into my arms. Daddy, I was so scared, Ethan sobbed. Mommy didn't come home, and I couldn't reach the phone, and I thought, shh, it's okay, I whispered, holding him tight. I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay. But as I held my son, both of us shaking, I knew that nothing would ever be okay again. The woman I'd trusted with the most precious thing in my life had abandoned him for her own selfish pleasure. Some betrayals can never be forgiven, and some marriages can never be saved. That night, as I tucked Ethan into my bed so he wouldn't have to sleep alone, I made a decision that would change everything. Sarah had shown me who she really was. Now I was going to show her the consequences of that choice. After ensuring Ethan was safely asleep at Jim's house, I stood in my garage, holding a Louisville Slugger that had been gathering dust since my softball days. The weight felt familiar in my hands, comforting in a way that probably should have concerned me. But concern was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. The 15-minute drive to the Riverside condominiums gave me time to think. Not about reconciliation or working things out. Those possibilities had died the moment I found my son crying on the kitchen floor. No, I was thinking about consequences, about what happens when someone abandons their child for selfish pleasure. I wasn't some hothead looking for a fight. I was a father who'd discovered that his wife was capable of unforgivable cruelty. The cold calculation that had replaced my initial panic surprised me. I wasn't thinking like a husband trying to save his marriage. I was thinking like a man who'd learned that some people deserve exactly what they get. The condo complex's security gate was laughably easy to bypass, a simple matter of waiting for another car to exit and slipping through behind them. I parked 3 spaces down from the unit Kelly had reluctantly provided the address for, taking a moment to study the building. Music drifted from the second-floor unit. Jazz. Sarah always said she hated jazz. I climbed the stairs slowly, the bat hanging loosely at my side. My knock was measured, controlled, the knock of a man who'd moved beyond caring about social niceties. Sarah answered the door in a silk robe I'd never seen before, her makeup smudged, her hair tousled. For a moment, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I walked past her without answering. The apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, sterile, the kind of place a man buys when he's more interested in impressing women than building a life. The younger man emerged from what I assumed was the bedroom, wearing only boxer shorts and a confused expression. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. "I'm the father of the 8-year-old boy you helped abandon tonight," I replied calmly. His confusion shifted to understanding, then to fear as he noticed the bat in my hand. "Look, man, I didn't know—" "You didn't know she was married?" I interrupted. "You didn't know she had a child? Or you didn't know she'd left him alone and screaming while she came here to f*** you?" "I swear, I didn't know about the kid," he started. I moved faster than he expected, the bat connecting with his ribs before he could raise his hands. He doubled over, gasping, and I followed up with a measured blow to his shoulder. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to ensure he'd remember this night for a long time. "Please," he wheezed. I'm sorry. "You're sorry you got caught," I said coldly. "There's a difference." Sarah was screaming something behind me, but her voice sounded distant, irrelevant. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about a man who'd participated in child abandonment, who'd helped a mother prioritize her own pleasure over her child's safety. I hit him once more, across the back, and he collapsed to the floor. Then I turned to Sarah, who was pressed against the wall, her face pale with shock. "You want to explain this?" I asked. "I lost track of time," she said frantically. "I was going to come home, but then we had dinner, and one thing led to another, and You abandoned our son," I stated. "I didn't abandon him," she protested. You left an 8-year-old child alone for 7 hours so you could come here and f*** this piece of shit," I said, my voice deadly quiet. Her attempts to explain became increasingly desperate. She talked about feeling neglected, about needing something for herself, about how she'd meant to come home earlier but lost track of time. Each word revealed the shallow selfishness that had driven her actions. I watched her with the detached interest of someone studying a specimen. This woman had shared my bed for 14 years, had given birth to my son, and I was just now seeing who she really was. The realization was almost liberating. "Is this the first time?" I asked. "What?" she replied, confused. "Is this the first time you've abandoned our son for another man?" "It's not like that," she started. "Answer the question." She looked at the floor. "No." I nodded slowly. "How many times?" "I don't know," she admitted. "A few. But I always came back before you did, and I always made sure he was fed and... You left him alone, multiple times, so you could come here." The affair partner was trying to sit up, blood trickling from his nose. I looked down at him with something approaching pity. "You knew she was married. You knew she had a child, and you still helped her abandon him?" "I didn't think," he mumbled. "No, you didn't think," I agreed. "You thought with your and now you're going to live with the consequences." I turned back to Sarah one last time. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. She'd killed whatever love remained between us the moment she chose this over our son. "The locks will be changed tomorrow," I said quietly. "Your things will be packed and waiting on the porch. If you want to see Ethan, you'll do it through lawyers." I walked toward the door, leaving them both bleeding and broken. Behind me, Sarah was pleading, begging for another chance, promising it would never happen again. But I was already thinking about the future, about the life Ethan and I would build without her. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some marriages can't be saved. And some people deserve exactly what they get. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and a yellow legal pad, approaching the situation with the same methodical precision I'd use for a hostile takeover. The emotional chaos of the previous night had crystallized into something colder, more focused. I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was building a foundation for the life Ethan and I deserved. Jim knocked on the door at 7:30 a.m., his digital camera in hand. "Figured you might want some documentation," he said, gesturing toward the splintered door frame. "I got pictures of everything from last night, the house, the condition Ethan was in, timestamps on it all." I nodded gratefully. "You mentioned security cameras?" "Motion activated," Jim replied. "Covers my front yard and your driveway. Caught everything from about 4 p.m. yesterday until you got home." He handed me a flash drive. "Audio's clear too. You can hear the boy crying from outside." The footage was devastating. It showed Sarah leaving at 3:47 p.m., her car pulling out of the driveway while Ethan was still at school. The audio captured his voice starting around 6:30 p.m., calling for his mother, then crying, then the heartbreaking progression to hysteria as hours passed. No mother came, no lights turned on, just a frightened child, alone and abandoned. I made copies of everything, storing them in multiple locations. This wasn't just about a custody battle. This was about ensuring that everyone understood what Sarah was capable of. My first call was to Dr. Patricia Chen, a child psychologist whom several colleagues had recommended. "I need to establish care for my son immediately," I explained. "There's been a traumatic incident involving abandonment." "Can you bring him in this afternoon?" she asked. "Yes, but I need this documented," I replied. "Official records, professional assessment, the works. This isn't just about helping him heal, it's about protecting him legally." Dr. Chen understood immediately. "I'll prepare a comprehensive evaluation. Bring any documentation you have of the incident." The school was my next stop. Principal Martinez listened with growing concern as I explained the situation. "We'll need to update Ethan's emergency contacts immediately," she said. "Sarah is currently listed as primary." "Remove her entirely," I instructed. "I'll provide you with a court order as soon as I have one." "And if she comes to pick him up?" Principal Martinez asked. "She doesn't have that right anymore. I'll have my attorney send you official documentation by this afternoon." The attorney was David Brennan, a family law specialist whose reputation for aggressive representation had earned him both respect and fear in the legal community. His office was downtown, occupying 2 floors of a glass tower that spoke to his success. "Child abandonment is a serious charge," he said after reviewing the evidence. "The documentation you've provided is extremely compelling. Security footage, witness testimony, medical records. This is about as solid as these cases get." "What about custody?" I asked. "With this evidence?" "You'll get sole custody, probably supervised visitation for her. The court doesn't look kindly on parents who abandon their children for affairs." "I want more than custody," I said. "I want her completely removed from our lives." Brennan raised an eyebrow. "That's ambitious. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that a woman who abandons her child for selfish pleasure deserves to face the full consequences of that choice, legally, financially, socially, everything." "I can work with that," he said with a slight smile. "But we'll need to be smart about it. Methodical. Let her mistakes do the work for us." That afternoon, I picked up Ethan from school and took him to Dr. Chen's office. The session was difficult, watching my son struggle to understand why his mother had left him alone, why she hadn't come home, why Daddy was so angry. But it was also validating. Dr. Chen's preliminary report documented clear signs of trauma and abandonment anxiety. "He's a resilient child," she told me afterward. "But this kind of betrayal from a primary caregiver can have lasting effects. He's going to need consistent, stable care to rebuild his sense of security." "He'll have it," I promised. "Whatever it takes." That evening, I began making phone calls. Not to gossip or seek sympathy, but to ensure that our close friends and family understood what had happened. I started with Sarah's parents, Robert and Margaret, who'd always treated me like a son. "I'm calling to let you know that Sarah and I are getting divorced," I said simply. "She abandoned Ethan for 7 hours to conduct an affair. I have security footage and witness testimony." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Margaret spoke. "She left Ethan alone?" "From 3:47 p.m. until I got home at 12:30 a.m., I confirmed. "He was crying for hours. The neighbors heard him." "Oh my God!" Robert's voice was strained. "Are you sure?" "I have it on video," I replied. "I also have photos of the condition he was in when I found him." The conversation that followed was painful, but necessary. Sarah's parents were devastated, their image of their daughter shattered by undeniable evidence. By the end of the call, they'd asked if they could maintain a relationship with Ethan, expressing their intention to have serious words with Sarah. I called my own parents next, then my sister, then our close friends. Each conversation was the same, a simple recitation of facts, supported by evidence, followed by shock and support. I wasn't asking people to choose sides, I was simply ensuring they understood the truth. The final call was to Sarah's employer, Global Marketing Solutions. I didn't speak to her directly, but I did have a conversation with her supervisor, Jennifer Walsh, about the reliability of employees who abandon their children. "I'm not asking you to fire her," I said carefully. "I'm simply informing you that she's going through some personal issues that have affected her judgment. Issues involving child abandonment." By the time I tucked Ethan into bed that night, the groundwork was laid. Tomorrow, Sarah would wake up to discover that her world had begun to crumble. But tonight, my son was safe, the truth was documented, and justice was in motion. "Daddy?" Ethan's voice was small in the darkness. "Is Mommy coming back?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. Mommy made some very bad choices, buddy. But you're safe now, and that's what matters. Did I do something wrong? He asked. No, son. You did nothing wrong. This is about grown-up problems that have nothing to do with you. As I watched him fall asleep, I felt a cold satisfaction settling over me. Sarah's actions had given me something I'd never expected: complete moral authority. She'd handed me every tool I needed to rebuild our lives without her interference. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The first domino fell at 8:15 a.m. when Jennifer Walsh called Sarah into her office. I learned about it later from Jennifer herself, who'd become unexpectedly cooperative after our conversation about employee reliability issues. Sarah seemed confused at first, Jennifer told me during our follow-up call. She kept asking what this was about, like she genuinely didn't understand why abandoning her child might be relevant to her employment. Global Marketing Solutions prided itself on being a family-friendly company. Their marketing materials featured smiling parents and happy children. Their corporate values emphasized integrity and responsibility. Having an employee who abandoned her child for an affair was a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. We can't terminate her for personal issues, Jennifer continued, but we can certainly make her position here uncomfortable. Project reassignments, reduced responsibilities, isolation from client-facing roles. She'll get the message. The second domino fell at Ethan's school, where word traveled quickly through the tight-knit community of parents. I hadn't gossiped. I'd simply provided factual information to people who needed to know. But the truth has a way of spreading, especially when it's supported by evidence. Margaret Chen, the PTA president, called me directly. "We've removed Sarah from all volunteer committees," she said. "The executive board felt it was inappropriate for someone with her judgment issues to be involved with children's activities." "I appreciate the concern for the children's safety," I replied carefully. "Is it true she left Ethan alone for 7 hours?" Margaret asked. "I have security footage if you'd like to see it," I offered. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. By the end of the day, Sarah's name had been quietly removed from every school-related activity. The parents who'd once invited her to coffee dates and dinner parties now viewed her as a pariah. The third domino was more personal. Robert and Margaret drove down from Portland, their faces grim with determination. They'd spent the night watching the security footage I'd provided, listening to their grandson's cries, and they were devastated. "We raised her better than this," Margaret said, her voice breaking. "I don't understand how she could do this to her own child." "Have you spoken to her?" I asked. "We tried," Robert replied. "She's staying at some hotel claiming this is all your fault, that you're overreacting. She actually had the nerve to say that what she did was normal, that lots of parents leave their kids alone for a few hours." 7 hours isn't a few hours, I pointed out. "We told her the same thing," Robert said. "We also told her that if she ever abandons Ethan again, she'll lose us too." Their support was unexpected but welcome. Sarah's own parents had chosen their grandson over their daughter, recognizing that some actions are unforgivable regardless of blood relation. The fourth domino involved the affair partner, whose name I'd learned was Marcus Webb. His wife, Lisa, had been contacted by a mutual friend who'd seen the security footage. The conversation that followed was apparently explosive. "She filed for divorce yesterday," Jim reported, having heard the details from a neighbor who worked at the family law firm Lisa had retained. "Took half his assets, full custody of their kids, and she's pushing for maximum alimony because of the adultery clause in their prenup." "Good for her," I said. "Gets better," Jim continued. "She also called his employer. He's some kind of regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. They're very strict about morality clauses, especially when it involves child endangerment." Marcus's professional life began crumbling as quickly as his personal one. His employer, concerned about liability issues and corporate reputation, had placed him on administrative leave pending investigation. In the pharmaceutical industry, where trust and reliability were paramount, being associated with child abandonment was career suicide. The fifth domino was Sarah's social circle, which collapsed with surprising speed. Her friends, many of whom were mothers themselves, couldn't reconcile the woman they knew with someone who would abandon her child for an affair. The security footage, which I'd shared selectively and strategically, was damning beyond dispute. "Kelly called me," Margaret mentioned during one of our updates. "She's horrified. She said if she'd known Sarah was planning to be gone all night, she never would have covered for her." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That enabling child abandonment makes her complicit," Margaret replied. "She's pretty shaken up about it." The sixth domino was the most satisfying. Sarah's desperate attempts to control the narrative. She'd begun calling our mutual friends, trying to explain her actions, but her explanations only made things worse. Every conversation revealed the shallow selfishness that had driven her choices. "She actually told the Hendersons that she deserved some happiness," Jim reported after running into Sarah at the grocery store. "Can you believe that? She's trying to make herself the victim in this." "How'd that go over?" I asked. "About as well as you'd expect," Jim replied. "Tom Henderson has 3 kids of his own. He told her she was lucky you didn't call the police." The seventh domino was financial. David Brennan had filed for emergency custody and spousal support termination, citing the child abandonment as evidence of Sarah's unfitness as a parent and spouse. The court had frozen our joint accounts pending investigation, but since I was the primary breadwinner, this hurt her far more than me. "She's had to move in with her cousin in Beaverton," David reported. "The hotel was too expensive and she can't access the joint funds. She's also received notice that her credit cards are being canceled." "Is she fighting the custody order?" I asked. "She tried," David replied. "Her lawyer withdrew from the case after seeing the evidence. Apparently, he told her that defending child abandonment was career suicide." The eighth domino was the most personal, Sarah's attempt to see Ethan. She'd shown up at his school, demanding to pick him up, only to be turned away by security. Principal Martinez had called me immediately. "She was very upset," Martinez reported. "She kept saying she had rights as a mother, that this was all a misunderstanding. But the court order was clear. No unsupervised contact." "How is Ethan handling this?" I asked. "He's confused," Martinez replied. "He asked why Mommy looked so sad. Dr. Chen suggested we maintain the routine until the custody hearing." The ninth domino was professional. Word had spread through Sarah's industry that she was involved in a domestic situation involving child abandonment. In a field where reputation was everything, this was devastating. 2 clients had already requested different account managers, and others were likely to follow. "She's essentially unemployable in her current position," Jennifer confirmed. "We're going to offer her a severance package to leave quietly. It's better for everyone involved." The 10th and final domino was the most devastating. Sarah's complete social isolation. She'd been removed from social media groups, disinvited from events, and ostracized by the community that had once welcomed her. The woman who'd once been involved in every school function and neighborhood gathering had become persona non grata. "She called me yesterday," Margaret said quietly. "She was crying, begging me to talk to you, to ask you to call off the dogs. She said her life was being ruined." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That she ruined her own life the moment she abandoned her grandson," Margaret replied. "That actions have consequences, and she's finally facing them." 2 weeks after that devastating phone call, Sarah's world had completely collapsed. She'd lost her job, her home, her friends, and her reputation. The affair partner had fled town to escape his own consequences. And through it all, I'd done nothing but tell the truth. The beauty of it was that I hadn't destroyed her. She'd destroyed herself. I'd simply ensured that everyone knew what she was capable of. The rest was just the natural consequence of her choices. That evening, as I watched Ethan play in the backyard, I felt a deep satisfaction. Justice had been served, not through violence or revenge, but through the simple power of truth. Sarah had shown everyone who she really was, and they'd responded accordingly. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some people can't be redeemed. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply stepping back and letting someone face the consequences of their own actions. 1 year later, I sat in the same chair where I'd made those first phone calls, but everything had changed. The house was brighter somehow, filled with the laughter of a child who'd learned that his father's love was unconditional and protective. Ethan had grown into a confident, secure 8-year-old who understood that some people weren't worthy of trust, but that didn't mean the world was unsafe. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. David Brennan had been right. The documented evidence of child abandonment made the legal proceedings straightforward. I'd received sole custody with Sarah, granted minimal supervised visitation every other weekend. She'd used it exactly 3 times. The most unexpected validation came from a phone call I received last month. Robert and Margaret had contacted me after cutting all ties with Sarah, unable to reconcile with a daughter who could abandon her own child. "We've been thinking," Robert said during our brief conversation. "We know this might be awkward, but we'd like to maintain a relationship with Ethan. We're his grandparents, and what Sarah did, it doesn't change how we feel about him." "Of course," I'd replied. "He needs all the love he can get." Their support had provided a validation that transcended legal victory. Even Sarah's own parents had recognized that some actions are unforgivable, that blood doesn't excuse the inexcusable. Sarah's complete downfall had been more thorough than I'd imagined possible. She'd lost her job at Global Marketing Solutions, accepting a severance package to leave quietly. Her attempts to find similar work had been unsuccessful. Word travels fast in professional circles, and abandoned child for affair isn't the kind of reference that opens doors. She'd moved to Seattle, I'd heard, living in a studio apartment and working retail. The woman who'd once coordinated charity galas and hosted dinner parties was now folding clothes at a department store. Her social media presence had vanished, her old friends had moved on, and the life she'd built over 14 years had crumbled to dust. Marcus Webb had fared even worse. His wife's divorce had been brutal, taking half his assets and full custody of their children. His employer had terminated him for cause, making him ineligible for unemployment benefits. Last I'd heard, he'd left Oregon entirely, presumably to start over somewhere his reputation couldn't follow him. The affair partner who'd helped a mother abandon her child had discovered that actions have permanent consequences. His moment of selfish pleasure had cost him his marriage, his children, his career, and his future. Like Sarah, he'd learned that some choices can't be undone. The most satisfying part wasn't their suffering. It was the life Ethan and I had built in the aftermath. Dr. Chen had been right about his resilience. With consistent care, stable routines, and the security of knowing he was protected, he'd flourished. The frightened child I'd found on the kitchen floor had become a confident boy who trusted that his father would always be there. I'd started dating again, not from loneliness but from a place of emotional health. Jennifer Walsh had introduced me to her sister, a pediatric nurse named Rachel, who understood the importance of putting children first. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months, and Ethan adored her. "She's nice," he'd told me after our first family dinner, "and she doesn't leave." That simple observation had captured everything. Rachel didn't leave. She showed up when she said she would, kept her promises, and treated Ethan with the respect and care he deserved. She was everything Sarah hadn't been: reliable, honest, and genuinely committed to the people she claimed to love. The legal system had done its job, but the real victory was psychological. Ethan had learned that his father would protect him, that some people weren't worthy of trust, and that actions had consequences. These were hard lessons for a child, but they were also valuable ones. As I watched him play in the backyard, building an elaborate fort with the confidence of a child who felt safe in his world, I understood that the best revenge hadn't been the confrontation or the social destruction. It had been this, the life we'd built based on trust, stability, and genuine care rather than the hollow promises that had defined my marriage. I'd become the father Ethan deserved all along, and that transformation was worth more than any revenge. Sarah had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, the chance to show my son what real love looked like. She'd shown him what it meant to be abandoned. I'd shown him what it meant to be protected. The woman who'd once shared my bed and my name had become irrelevant to our lives. She'd chosen momentary pleasure over permanent love, and now she was living with the consequences of that choice. Meanwhile, Ethan and I were building something real, something lasting, something worthy of the trust a child places in his father. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, but they can be transcended. Some people can't be redeemed, but they can be replaced. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well, loving deeply, and protecting what matters most. The phone call that had shattered everything had also revealed everything. Now I knew exactly what I was fighting for, and exactly what I was fighting against. The battle was over, and the right side had won. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.